Okay, I'm going to welcome everyone into our first session of our Kentucky Livestock Marketing Association webinar series. Tonight's session is about the Livestock Marketing Association and why producers should consider selling at a livestock market. My name is Becky Thompson, and I'm the director of the Kentucky Beef Network. We know that marketing cattle is a very important topic to our cattlemen across Kentucky, and we're really excited to be partnering with the Kentucky Livestock Marketing Association over the next 3 weeks to give you a series of webinars about marketing cattle and creating a better partnership with your livestock market. Tonight's webinar is going to be recorded, and we will be sharing the links out later this week. Before we get started, I want to touch on a few Zoom housekeeping tips. The chat box at the bottom of your screen will allow you to submit comments at any time. Simply click chat, type your comment, and then hit the enter button to submit the comment. We ask that if you have a question for our panelists this evening, you use the question and answer box. This will allow you to submit a question to the host or our panelists, and we can either answer your question live or type a response to you. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dave Maples with the Kentucky Cattlemen's Association and Jim Carter with the Livestock Marketing Association. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Beck. Thank you so much. Thank everybody for joining us tonight. I think we got a treat tonight with Jim Carter. Jim and I have been buddies for a long time, and our career have kind of paralleled each other for better than 30 years now. So had a good relationship with Jim. Before we get started, I just want to thank our markets and our auction markets and our stockyards and our buyers. In Kentucky, we've got a good situation in Kentucky. If you look at the charts, you look at the prices. Kentucky producers, cattlemen do pretty well. Our markets have invested a lot of money in their barns and their facilities, and we're just really, really proud of it. We've got a nice agenda tonight, and we're going to go through it. But before we get into that, I want to turn it over to Jim and welcome you here to Lexington tonight. And thank you so much for driving up and being with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a great relationship. One thing that I would like to mention, Becky had mentioned to me earlier in the week that regardless of how competitive our markets are in the state, and they are, it's a very cohesive group, and we've got a tremendous network in place. Not only are all of the markets members of the National Livestock Marketing Association, and we'll talk a little bit about what they provide for the markets, but I would like for everyone to know that all of the markets in the state are also members of the Kentucky Livestock Marketing Association. And these guys get together on a regular basis. It's pretty exciting. They truly let their hair down and get in the weeds, talk about how they can be better managers and better business people. And we'll talk a little bit about that possibly as we get in through it. I hope, Dave, that your listeners tonight can, number one, maybe identify some opportunities as we look at the livestock marketing system that we have in Kentucky. See some transparency and a little better insight and knowledge about auctions and the options that they have within the state of Kentucky right now. And lastly, I hope that they can find a whole new comfort level in utilizing the existing market system that we have here in Kentucky, because like Dave said, it's absolutely second to none. And hopefully we'll get a chance to visit about that a little bit.
Yes, sir, Jim. Hey, so before we get into our definitions and all, do you mind taking just a little bit of time and talking to our audience about LMA and exactly who LMA is and how LMA works? Is that all right?
Yo, you bet. No doubt over 30 years, I have been asked any number of times, what do you do and what do you provide? What services do we have? And that's hard to do in 30 words or less. I've often said that we mitigate their liabilities. That's a big, heavy term. So let's just talk a little bit about what we actually do every day. Dave, you are an advocate for your producers.
Right.
Your producers see, they utilize, they know that you have services, but there is so much that goes on behind the scenes, what you're doing every day on the hills and with the other organizations. That's very similar to who we are on behalf of the auction markets for competitive marketing. I've often said we're not just the best game in town, which I like to think that we are. But oftentimes I would have to say we're the only game in town when it comes to promoting and protecting the competitive market system. And we'll look a little bit at why right now, especially, it's never been more important to address some competition. But as advocates for the market, we help them be more informed and conscientious of the issues, regulations, compliance, like the animal disease traceability, all of the different compliance issues that they have to deal with, we provide at the market. We provide them so that they can provide at the market. We provide forms, the documents, the signage to accommodate their producers. We assist with employee hiring and management. This includes animal handling protocol. We even have BQA certification for our market handlers. And we do animal handling self-assessments. So in addition, we've got in-house legal counsel, and we provide legal assistance in any number of areas, marketing and communication experts that work with the markets, from advertising and marketing and any presentations or sound bites that they might need in their efforts, accounts and records, and a whole array of insurance products. We want, more importantly than anything, just to better equip them so that they can be better advocates for their producers. So that's just a rough edge cut, but it's a big case that we carry, you bet.
Like I just really, while I got a chance, I got to say the team in Kansas City and the team that you got out in the field, I really appreciate the working relationship that we as the Cattlemen's Association have with Chelsea and Mark and all of the crew there. And we've taken some of our junior cattlemen out to visit there in Kansas City. And I really appreciate that relationship that we have. So if you don't mind, can we get into some of the foundations of the marketing structure? You know, I grew up just kind of like you. I didn't run an auction market, but some of my first memories in life were going to the stockyard. And that was always what I love. And I hear those stories and you know, you drive up there and you see it. But as I've gotten into this job, there are a lot of terms that I didn't really realize. I didn't realize the oversight that USDA and PNS have. You know, some of the terms of a market agency. You know, you got a stockyard and a market agency. The dealers, do you mind talking about some of that and some of the even the safeguards that are in place, like the bonds and even maybe the custodial account and some of the foundation of owning and operating a livestock market? That's a big question.
Yeah. They do whole college courses on that.
But you can't do that
we're gonna knock it out
300 words or less either.
We're gonna knock it out in 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay, 10 minutes.
First off, when we look at entities in agriculture, if we are not the most regulated entity in agriculture, we are absolutely one of the most regulated entities in agriculture. The USDA has the AMS, which houses the PNS, that's the Packers and Stockyards Administration, the Act, and the order that we operate under. They are extremely in our business and regulate us and stay on top of every facet of how we operate. I wish those were the only organizations that we had to deal with.
Yep. But you don't.
When I look at what our markets are dealing with, oftentimes to protect even the producing sector that we're dealing with every day, they would be, the FSIS, the Food Safety Inspection, OSHA, EPA, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, and the State Veterinarian Department, the Animal Disease Traceability, all of that department, the ADT, tax laws, trucking issues, lien laws, and then the forms and the documents to stay in compliance for all of that. That's something that we're providing and working with the markets every day. All of this while protecting the producer's confidentiality and anonymity. That's huge. That we're not sending somebody to the farm.
Right.
We have to deal with a lot of problems, a lot of issues. I like to take the podium every chance I can and say, don't bring your problems to town. But when that happens, we deal with them. We don't like it. It's not right, but we deal with them, and we protect that producer's anonymity. When you ask from a market agency service concept, the checklist that the markets provide every day for the producers is extensive and it's expensive. Obviously, we have brick and mortar. Not all of them, but most of every fixed facility has a facility for viewing, buying. Obviously, it's a social event. Employees for grading, sorting, commingling, loading, unloading. Many of these employees are very skilled labor in grading and handling livestock. State inspectors are on premise every sale day. Veterinarians are available every sale day. An established buyer base. I heard one of my market guys tell a producer one day that was considering selling direct. He said, I can pass those cattle by more people in one day on the phone and in my front row than you can show to in maybe 2 months.
2 months.
And that buyer base is hugely important. And in Kentucky, it is absolutely phenomenally second to none. We have the largest, strongest buyer base east of the Mississippi.
Right here.
Maybe including the Midwest.
Yep.
And every one of them are sitting on our front rows and supporting the fixed auction facilities, the weekly fixed facility. We take care of all the regulatory compliance on behalf of the producers, all of the documentation. Most of them have no earthly idea what is even involved. And those reports are going to the state vets and the different entities and regulatory agencies. And we take care of all of that. Often they have tremendous restaurants. We can't overlook the the community vitality that when we talk about the social aspect, the community vitality that I like to refer to also rolls out and rolls into that community. When you look at the economic impact, if you're fortunate to have an auction market in your locale, wherever that is, they've done economic impact studies that show a small town of only 5,000 would realize over $1 million. So you can imagine what some of these larger regional markets, how they impact from a tax basis. They're employing people. Those are our residents. They're our friends. They're our family. They're providing jobs. And I'm yet to talk to a single market in my 6 states. And I failed to mention that I am one of 9 field men that are doing this every day. And I have 6 states in my territory, and I don't think I have a single market that does not support the youth.
Right.
Working with the FFA, the 4-H. I've never heard of a buying station hosting a producer BQA certification program. or hosting a county cattlemen's association meeting, which we do regularly. So that community vitality and the economic impact is huge. Financial security. I think we're going to spend maybe a little more time when we get into the custodial account. We have checks and balances, custodial accounts, and bonds. We have checks and balances in place that no other marketing entity has, is not required, and they do not have. So that custodial account, we will spend a minute about that in a minute.
Do you mind to just, or
Sure.
just be patient, or
Okay.
because I'm really
Well,
like to know what that custodial account is and understand how
last,
that works.
as I run through a checklist of what I think the markets provide, you know, I want to dwell on that financial security, but the most paramount aspect next to the financial security is competition. Now, you're going to hear that all night as long as I'm here and I can still talk.
Okay.
And let's talk a little about the custodial account.
Okay.
You want to know about the custodial account.
Yeah.
No other marketing entity except the auction markets, the regular marketing auctions, are required to have a custodial account. It is extremely regulated by the packers and stockyards. We have an extremely short period of time to make that account whole. That is a trust account for producer proceeds only.
Okay.
In other words, you are guaranteed payment through a custodial account. The funds have to be there to pay for those cattle when you sell at auction.
Okay.
No other entity, a dealer or a buying station, any of those are required to carry a custodial account, and they do not carry custodial accounts. If you want me to get into buying stations and some of the alternatives, I'll be glad to. I have often heard, and it's been said, it's been implied that we have the same checks and balances and financial security at a buying station as we do at a market. I'm sorry, but that's not true. That is absolutely not so. A buying station is a dealer. They have a $75 dealer bond or dealer license and a minimal bond set by the P&S. The markets also carry a bond. It's another level of security for the markets, but that's all that a dealer has, and a buying station is a dealer. It's an individual buying your cattle out of a checkbook, and I hope those funds are there to cover the check because they are not guaranteed. When we have a default on a bond, let's make a note of that. They are bonded. Those bonds are minimal. And historically, when there's a bond claim or a default, a bad check, and there's a bond claim, over forever, they have settled for pennies on the dollar. Literally pennies on the dollar. We could talk about Eastern and any number of bankruptcies and defaults, and it is nauseating what those producers.
So one of the
are
big
gonna get.
protections is that custodial account. And
It, as far as the financial stability
Bill,
for the producer, the security is paramount.
okay.
Where the auction market structure is the only entity with a custodial account. Now we can get into the packers, but we don't need to go there.
No.
They're highly regulated also, but that custodial account and that financial security is paramount.
So one of the things that you talked about was competition. And if you look in Kentucky, and especially Kentucky, we are blessed with a lot of dealers, a lot of markets. And, when I go back and I read the history, it goes back to the beginning of the country. We had court days, and they came in and they set up and they established these auction markets. And when I came to work here for the Cattlemen's Association, and I mean, I really realized how strong the buying base was in Kentucky. So do you mind just to talk about, because you did talk about competition and how that is and kind of what's going on out there across the state or our region with the competition for our cattle?
Once again, our buyer base, it's just, I can't say enough about it. The strength, our dealers, our order buyers we appreciate them. We appreciate the job they do. We need them. The beauty of our buyer base in Kentucky is not only the strength and the numbers, but they all are supporting the competitive market system. They're all on the seats at every market. We have a phenomenal buyer base in Kentucky. I didn't want to blow too much smoke at you guys. When we looked and there was a note about, how our Kentucky market's different from other markets. That's easy. I don't know whether to give credit to the KBN or the LMA or to the extension or to KCA, but the quality of your cattle, the consistency and more uniformity rather, and the quality, how it's gotten so much better, how you've created every format of alternative marketing, and there are alternative market options for every producer in this state. Now, every market might not be doing every alternative marketing, whether it's commingling, board sales, internet. Many of the markets are doing any number or combination of, the CPH sales and the VAC 45 sales and the internet sales. There are very few maybe that are doing all of it, but there is not a producer in this state that does not have access.
Right.
And I think that's huge.
No, one thing I'm really proud of Becky and the folks at KBN for putting this together. Next week, we're going to have several of our market managers on this Zoom. So I'm really proud that they're participating with us to talk about the services that they're offering. And I think, like you said, all of them do some things a little bit different, and we've got lots of options. We've also nowadays we the farmer, cattleman, they've got lots of choices and how they do market their cattle. And that's one of the things that Becky and I have had to spend a whole lot of time with. And this is marketing cattle is a personal thing, and it's a thing. And I know just growing up, that relationship that my granddad had with Johnny Wallace or with Keith Parrish, we just always did business with those folks. But the evolution, just a little bit, when I started out and in my community there, we had an auction market. There was an auction market in all the towns. The thing is kind of going along with what's happening with our markets is kind of what's happening with me is working for the Kentucky Cattlemen Association. I don't quite have as many producers as I had when I came here 22 years ago. So a little bit of the evolution of where those folks were in every community, and I'll just go back and I talked about it. I did a project 15 years ago, and I think in Kentucky I went to like 42 markets. Today we're down into to less than 25. There's been changes. I kind of got a feeling there's going to be some more changes as we go through. And I think you alluded to it just a little bit a while ago of all of these different kind of ways to sell cattle. And some of the things that we do today, we may not be doing them next year, or we have to do it another way. So it's going to be fun to watch our markets evolve into how things are going to change. So do you mind if you don't, because I know you grew up in a stockyard or in a market, but from your perspective, just a little bit of the evolution, and then I know you've told me that you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you see? I mean, you've been around this game a long, long time, and from advise me in my seat, because I still got some more years in me now. I know you're trying to slip out a little bit early, but I think these next 5 years are going to be pretty pivotal in how we market cattle.
I hope we get an opportunity to introduce Craig Taylor too, as I will be retiring in the 1st of July probably, and it's been a tough decision, but it's that long in the tooth deal you were talking about a while ago.
I'm a little bit younger than you though now.
Dave, I've addressed from the podium and at cattlemen's conventions and different things as they bring in the grid markets and the new alternative facets. And it's like, Jim, you want to talk about the competitive market system? It's like, well, get out of my way. I'm third generation in the market. I was born and raised in a stockyard, and I'm very passionate about competitive market and the auction system. I've heard, especially from young producers, the more progressive, looking for the new mousetrap, talk about, well, you guys, Dave, are still doing business like you did 40, 50 years ago. Dave, nobody is doing business like they did 40 or 50 years ago. Now, that's the bottom line.
Right.
Why are we still selling cattle in the auction way? Why do we sell the best horses? To borrow from a dear friend, why do we sell the best horses at auction? Why do we sell our highest and best art and paintings and real estate and bulls?
Yeah, purebred.
The reason we're still selling livestock through the auction is because it's the best way to sell livestock. You take a competitive nature out of the livestock industry, and we're going to look like the hog industry. There has never been a more important time for us to keep any and all competition in the marketplace. Dave, if I can just back up a minute. Last fall, April, May, June, July, do I have to remind anybody what dire straits this industry was in? That margin that we were watching go out the window, and the dollars that we were losing, and the box beef with the fats where they were. And for 18 months, you and I have heard nothing but people jumping up and down on the table saying, what? We need more competition in the market. Transparency and competition. That's what we need more of. So it's almost cynical for me when I think about the buying station concept, that you would have the resources, the output, the time, the energy, the nutritional needs, the genetics in a calf crop or in a preconditioned lot, that you would just drop those cattle off at a set of pens and say, send me a check, mark them give me what you think they're worth, and let your conscience be your guide. I'm sorry, that to me is almost a cynical concept. Yeah. And I hope those funds are there to cover that check. But I've seen a lot of change in my time. You had made note earlier that, what were some of those? What have I seen in Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky? I guess we could talk a long time about the reduction of numbers. We're all fighting over fewer cattle. We're putting more meat on the table, more meat in the packing houses with fewer cattle. Our genetics are getting better, but urbanization is eating up our farms and our real estate. Our producers are getting older. We've got a lot of obstacles and problems that this industry is continuously working on. And it's a huge issue and talk and concern amongst our markets and LMA. But when I look at some of the greatest changes that you had asked about earlier, it really kind of jumps out at me. It'd be transportation, the technology, and the compliance. When I look at my bag that I used to carry, when I started this, it was brucellosis and the bangs. Now that bag is so full of compliance issues, of forms, of documents and issues and organizations that are continuously hounding our industry and that we're dealing with at the market every day on behalf of the producer. It's phenomenal.
So that's really one service that the auction market provides that sometimes I even forget is when I take them there, they're doing the background work to get my cattle regulatory compliant to move to the next step.
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't see that.
Absolutely.
You don't see that. So that's one of the things I have to remember. Transportation.
That's got to be one of the most obvious for this kid. I watch thousands of trucks back up to the dock, pickup trucks, straight trucks, the ground loads, the goosenecks, the drive-throughs. How that's aided in safety for our employees and producers and decreased liability issues, loose cattle, transport. And that's another thing. It's not a huge deal anymore with the logistics of our trucking system to move cattle at a further distance if you need it.
That was one of the things I mentioned. I did a little project 15 years ago, and I went around to just about all of our markets. And one of the things that I started noticing is all of these markets were built on a railroad, and there was a railroad track somewhere. Well, now in the 15 years, we've really evolved, and we got in Kentucky, especially, we got some really nice facilities. And those facilities,
some of the best,
are built on the interstate system or on a nice road system that they can get those trucks in and out. And I think that evolution is pretty good. And as cattlemen, I hope we take time and appreciate that there has been investment all across this state in those facilities.
Absolutely. I'm glad you acknowledged that and appreciated it. Lastly, the most blatant change that I would identify, and I think we could talk a long time about some of the changes, but it would be the technology. It's instant information at our fingertips. It's the internet, it's social media, the opportunity to market ourselves, to introduce your family, showcase your facility, put your sale orders up. We're live streaming. LMA Auctions has over 100 markets on a live feed. More and more of them now are taking live bids. The internet sales, they're selling tons of bulls, hay, sheep, goats, groups of cattle, bulls, taking live bids. That obviously has changed our business.
A whole lot.
It's changed our business.
I think as cattle change and get better and the consumers want higher quality beef and Becky and I were at a deal the other day, and most of the cattle now are grade and prime or high choice, and they're looking more for natural cattle, for organic programs. I think as time goes on, our markets are going to have to evolve to deal with really a consumer reaction that's going to come back through the packers, the feed yards, back down to the farmer, and then that interaction between the farmer and the feed yards. I would assume, and I think that's where our auction markets are going to have to facilitate some of those changes, and one of it's going to be the kind of cattle that we have. But technology is huge right there. Becky, do you have any questions for us, or do we
I don't have any. I have one, and I want to remind all of our participants that they can use the Q&A box at the bottom to ask their questions of Dave and Jim. Tonight's an informal night of just a conversation about our marketing structure and the services that, how LMA can help support our markets in Kentucky. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in at any time. Dave, right now I have a question for you. Why do you think it's important that a trade association maintain a relationship with the livestock markets in their state?
Why should I maintain that relationship with our markets? Very, very good question, Beck. And I think it's several answers there, but I guess for me is really, I look at the data and I look at where cattle are sold. In Kentucky, we're selling just over 1 million head a year through our auction markets. Kentucky doesn't have but about 1.1 million cows. So the big majority of our cattle are sold at an auction market. One of the other things that Jim has brought up, I go to a lot of county cattlemen's meetings. It's very seldom, Jim, that I go to one that there's not one of our auction markets that are, at least they're there. And most of the time they're sponsored. And it really helps me, Becky, on my side with growing the Cattlemen's Association. One of the other things in my job that I have, I got multiple hats that I wear. And one of the things that we do is we handle the beef checkoff. And those auction markets are the collection points. And most of the beef checkoff is collected through our auction markets. So it's very important for me and our office to work with our stockyards, our buyers that out there. I try my best to know as many of them as I can, just to have the relationship with this guy. And he mentioned Craig Taylor. So Craig's come on and it started working with LMA. Craig's already been in our office, I think 3 times. He and I spent a good bit of time talking through this. So the big one, I guess, Becky, is my members sell for the most part at a stockyard or at an auction market in Kentucky. So it's highly important for us to keep a good relationship with those local markets.
Didn't we just see a report, Dave, that we had a little over how many cattle sold through an auction market in Kentucky in the last year?
Yeah, it was this past year was just shy of 1 million head.
Okay.
Last year there was over 1 million. It was like 1.2. Okay. So that's where our cattle historically sold at the stockyards.
Okay.
89% of all producers, research has shown, USDA research shows that over 89% of all producers in the country utilize the fixed facility or the auction market to market some portion of their cattle. In the Southeast, that's the majority of their cattle.
So we have some other questions that have come in while we've been talking. So the first one, can you talk a little bit how technology has changed the transparency and openness of livestock markets? I don't know which one of you, and I know, Jim, you said that you don't have that crystal ball, but just from your observations of looking at markets across 6 different states, some of the things you've seen with changes in technology.
And and what was the question? How that's changed?
It's the transparency and openness of markets.
Yes.
That I can get on the internet and see what my neighboring town's market did. You can see all the market reports across the United States pretty much in real time.
Absolutely. And our LMA auctions is not the only platform that shows live viewing of the sales.
You can watch them any day.
You can watch them any and every day. The transparency, I would like to take that opportunity to say how you can go to any market in Kentucky now. If you want to see one significant change is how these cattle are being represented. Number one, you can't beat a good, open, honest auction market. There's not much to hide with who's bidding and who's present, but how these markets are representing these cattle anymore to create a reputation. Very, very seldom do cattle come in that there's not something disclosed about the days of weaning, the days on feed, the level of shots, how many shots, what shots, where they came from, how long they've been hauled. That's transparency. And when you do that in an open and competitive system, that's huge.
So the next question, I'm not sure if either one of you, how you want to handle it, but it's a question about Eastern livestock. And I know we talked about the importance of a custodial account and protection of the producers, but the question is, was Eastern livestock settled? Was it settled or closed? How was it concluded?
Gee, we could talk a long time, Becky.
I know. Let's not go deep down that rabbit hole.
Okay,
but just hit it from a high level.
I had some personal tragedy in my life that I don't want to talk about. And next to that, it was the most dramatic stage of my life, dealing with the phone calls, the friends of 40 years, the markets calling me from the bank, and them dealing with the PNS, making sure that the funds were there. One point that I would want to make about the Eastern debacle, as I refer to it, which was a bankruptcy, how those markets had to lawyer up, how our lawyers worked 24 hours, 7 days a week, assisting the markets, but how those producers out in the country that sold to Eastern livestock with that dealer bond, and that's all their protection they had, most of them, if they received anything, was less than 14 cents on the dollar. And that didn't count what most of them were spending with lawyers. Many of them had to deal with preferential transfer, and we don't want to get into that, but that's a huge issue. I personally know of 49 markets in my trade area that were holding significant bad debt, bad paper, non-sufficient funds. Any number of them had to deal with the preferential transfer with the bankruptcy trustee. All across this country, tens of millions of dollars. And we don't need to forget the Edmonton buying station. Had the Department of Agriculture not gotten involved in that situation, those producers, and Dave, those producers would not have received one nickel.
Yep.
So let's keep that in perspective. What the major point that everyone needs to take away from the Eastern debacle, and it was coast to coast, primarily from the Midwest to the Southeast, Eastern, far West Texas, and all the way to the East Coast, all the way to Michigan. During that entire period, not one single market closed or issued a bad check to a producer. I'm extremely proud of that.
Yeah. And I would have to say, Beck, I just got to chime in a little bit and sitting in my seat at the Cattlemen's Association, and I didn't realize what a traumatic event that was going to be in my life. And that was a time, if you ever needed to be a member of the Cattlemen's Association and be proud of it, it was for that. Because as you mentioned, lawyering up, we had to lawyer up.
Sure.
And we got in the middle of that early on and did a lot of good for some producers. And that was a sad situation, and I hope I don't ever have to go through it again.
Dave, can I share a story?
If she'll let us.
Will you let us? Can I share a story?
You
We got
have
time.
some more questions. Yeah, you got time. Share
Okay, I think this is going to make a significant point. The Eastern, maybe we got off in the weeds a little bit,
Okay.
but when we've talked about the financial stability of the market and the competition issues, when I was a much younger man, I hooked up with an auction market operator in South Mississippi. I wanted to graze some cattle. I went to the bank. I borrowed money. I had him buy me 150 heifers. He took them home. He straightened them up. We kicked them out on ryegrass. Full partnership. Auction market operator in South Mississippi. He called me when the cattle weighed 750. They were ready to go, running out of grass. And he had a local he had a local dealer of substance, the regular buyer on his market that had approached him about those heifers. He needed the heifers. He knew the heifers, and he made him a fair market offer. My partner called me, Bill called me, and he said, Jim, what do you want to do? I said, Bill, what I want you to do is you can show those cattle for a couple of weeks, have your board sale through the auction. You can video them, sell them at 2 o'clock if you want to, or you can run them through the ring. I think he'll be an active bidder, and there's not much doubt in my mind that I'll be dollars ahead. He sold those cattle. They made trucking. They made commission. They made a healthy profit. He paid me my check. He got his commission. Becky, that market never got paid for those cattle. I hope everyone understood that's a real life story. It can't happen to me, but it happened to me. That commission was the best investment that this young man ever made in his life. And I feel that as producers, if we don't take the well-being of this industry, if we want to keep any independence, then we need to do everything in our power. As a cow-calf man all the way to the feeder, we need to take every opportunity to maintain every level of competition in this market as we can. I think everyone deserves the right to benefit from competition.
So,
thank you.
Along those same lines, I know that the buying station conversation is a passion point for you. We have a question about the fact that buying stations are not a new concept. They've been around for a long time. But what do you think is bringing about the renewed interest and excitement in the buying stations as opposed to doing business in an auction market? So why do you think they're the new trendy thing that everyone's doing right now instead of continuing to do business at a sale barn?
Well, I don't want to say that these people possibly are uninformed, but if they've heard what we've talked about here tonight, if they understood this tonight, if what they had been being told was completely transparent and was completely truthful, they would understand the tremendous exposure that they were putting themselves under. So maybe it looks like a marketing ploy. It's an alternative. I understand that, but it's an extremely dangerous alternative.
Yeah, I think it's important that we help producers understand the value of the commission that they pay to their markets and the return on that investment, like you spoke about with your story, and helping people become that they better understand that value. Because right now, I think in some ways they feel like it's just money out of their check and they're not really seeing a return, and they don't maybe have a high sense of appreciation for what the services that you all provide to them on the backside are.
I had a congressman tell me that information is power. And I appreciate more than you know the opportunity to allow us to come and tell our story, a truthful story, and maybe an unknown story in certain aspects.
Yep.
We want your producers to have every financial security that's possible.
Yep. So next question. what do you think will prevent the vertical integration of cattle production, unlike pork or poultry? I think you both have you need to both try and answer this, please.
What has everyone been screaming for the last 18 months? We need more competition in the marketplace, more competition and more transparency. I don't want to get in the weeds over packer concentration. There are a lot of people a lot smarter than me that are spending a lot of time trying to solve some of these issues and problems. But if we don't maintain competition in the marketplace, we're going to look like the hog industry.
Well, but we're also seeing indicators, though, with the Walmart program, as just an example of these supply chains lining up and staging cattle, from a cow-calf standpoint, all the way through the supply chain. I mean, is that not the beginnings of a vertical integration?
Yes.
Yes.
You want to address some of this?
Okay.
Please go ahead.
I mean, we're getting out the crystal balls and we don't know.
It's a niche market.
Yes.
It's truly a niche market. And when you've got organizations, and you don't want to get me started on the big corporations, but when you have organizations with that kind of power and that kind of money, they push us and pull us around all the time, Becky, to just try something. Hey, that sounds like a good marketing concept. We'll give it a try. Y'all make it work.
Yeah.
And we're constantly dealing with that. A lot of it is perception. A lot of it might be fact-based, but a lot of it is just a marketing ploy. And a lot of it is contingent on misinformation. The consumer perception is going to be an issue that we're going to have to deal with, because they're big enough to just push us around and say, let's give it a try. Maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe it's going to turn your world upside down, but I'm willing to give it a try. I got nothing to lose. And that's kind of what we're seeing from some of the Walmarts.
Yeah. Dave, do you have anything you want to add? No.
I don't have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that we're going to have to learn to probably to live with.
Adapt to. Yeah.
Adapt to
and help our small, we're just going to have to continue to adapt or help our small producers or our members here in Kentucky continue that adaptation process. I appreciate everyone's questions so far. If you have some more, you can continue to type them in. The next one is, if I want to add value to my cattle, what can I do at an everyday auction? And I know, Jim, you and I talked about that you're not a market manager. So if you want to defer this question to next week, we can do that. But I thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk about it if you wanted to.
Well, I would. I would love to hear some professional market people talk about what they're doing and what they're advising. Let's face facts. These guys at the auction, the ladies, we've got any number of lady operators and owners, gentlemen, but these guys are seen as consultants. They are called, they are consulted with. They are looked to. I hate to say that we're the mouth of the industry at times, but when you want to talk about true price discovery, it happens at the auction. And that's where they're coming to figure out what they're going to be given or what they're going to take, or when are they prepared to take it, and what's it going to take to prepare my cattle to bring that. And those guys you've got next week, I think they're going to be in a tremendous position to say, hey guys, pay attention, because they work for the producers and they're very conscientious.
So I know LMA had a really nice ad in Cow Country News this month about true price discovery. Help me, give me a little bit on true price discovery as it relates to a cow-calf producer, and the encouragement that they need to continue working with an auction market to maintain that, and the importance of maintaining that. Well,
I think the importance is back to the major points. there are any number of alternatives out there, and you can talk about board sales to internet to the whole bit. Those are very viable alternatives. But when we look at the transparency, the financial security, and the competition issues, that's what it's all about. That's what true price discovery is all about. It happens at the auction. That fair, open, competitive market is where the true value is discovered. Everybody else is going to use those figures, manipulate those figures at times. We talk about the market news, and I've been years supporting them. I hear both ends of that gamut. That they're frustrated or they're mad at the market guy, or they're frustrated and mad because they don't have a reporter. Oftentimes they won't report those extremes. Oftentimes they feel like there's not enough cattle to establish a trend. But so I don't always just hang my hat on a market news report in the newspaper. Those guys are professionals. They serve a purpose, but people need to understand that the market news service was created to create, believe it or not, competition between the auction markets.
So if I don't use the market reports, where do I go to get that information? What's that look like?
Well, the technology is available. Oftentimes, I would be communicating with my marketing professionals in the area. That auction market guy, go sit down in the ring. We've all got number one calves, believe it or not. They're all a certain weight and they're number one.
Yeah.
But when you spend some time in an auction market, realizing what the value of some of those cattle are, then you'll have a little better feel of what you need to be doing, the direction you need to be going, and they will help you with everything from genetics to sale format.
So what if I'm a small producer and I'm a little intimidated about talking to my sale barn manager? Do you have advice for me on how I go about developing that relationship?
When I look at, I think that's an excellent point. When I look at these niche sales, the alternative sales, the board sales, the VAC 45, I think the success of those sales hinges on two things. Number one, the relationship between those producers and that market operator and everyone involved in that sale, whether that be the KBN, the KCA, the extension, university, whatever. But that relationship is paramount. And number two, it's a supply and demand situation. If you don't have the buyers, if they're not willing to give maybe a premium for them, or if you don't have sufficient buyers to buy a very specific type of niche kind of cattle, whether they're natural, organic, farm fresh, whatever, then that's a problem. But you also have to have the supply. The numbers got to be there for that. The buyers got to be there, needing those cattle, sufficient buyers to buy them, and the cattle, there needs to be a supply of those cattle to justify the time and energy and expense to put a sale like that on. So as producers, we need to keep that in mind as we approach these markets and maybe fuss about, I don't have this sale or I don't have access to that sale. I think if they will look across the state, there will be access to every kind of special, alternative, niche market that they're looking for. Most of these markets are doing most of this currently and are carrying the paperwork and the compliance and the forms to verify them, and that's coming from LMA. I hope that helps.
It does.
I'm trying not to dodge your question.
No, you're good. So our last question is, can you explain the difference between an order buyer and a dealer, and which one we see the most here in Kentucky?
Oh, gee. The definition is easy. What we see the most of, that's going to be a tougher question, because So many of these guys can be a dealer today, an order buyer this afternoon, a dealer tomorrow, and an order buyer by lunch. An order buyer acts on behalf of an entity. In other words, I work for you. I'm buying these cattle on your behalf for a commission. I can't give them away, sell them, trade them. I can't do anything with them. They belong to you. You have to authorize that. The P&S only has authorization and oversight over your bond. A dealer is an individual that takes full possession. They are bonded for the full amount that they purchase, but they are owners. When they buy those cattle, they can mark them whatever they want to. They can give them away, sell them, resell them, sort them, ship them, whatever they do. They are responsible for payment. And an order buyer, ultimately, who's paying for the cattle is one aspect. The order buyer, that entity that he's operating for. Most of the order buyers in our country are probably cow buyers. We don't have a lot of corporate buyers. You go out to Kansas, Oklahoma, those guys have corporate orders. They're sitting there buying all day long for Freona and Cactus. And those are true order buyers. They have corporate deals. Where the barbers or American or Bogey, they might be buying for turnout cattle for local producers. And then this afternoon, they might have a corporate deal where they're buying on commission. Does that help you? The P&S has full control and much more authority over dealer transactions where they are only responsible for the bonds oversight for an order buyer.
So just a clarification, one of the two has to be registered with the Department of Agriculture.
Both.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's just to make sure that they have the proper paperwork and things in place.
And bonds.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But that's their only responsibility is the bonding level.
Which division of the Department of Agriculture actually oversees those? Do you know? Dave, you might not. It's Jim.
The Packers and Stockyards.
Right, but where does the Packers and Stockyards Act fall within the Department of Agriculture?
Is it the USDA? Packers and Stockyards at
USDA.
Right.
Under the AMS.
And the state veterinarian's office.
State veterinarian's office is in Kentucky at the Kentucky Department of Ag.
Correct.
Okay. They maintain the list.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have a question that came in and I was reading it. Jim, I don't know that there's a question here, but it's a comment and I'm going to read it to you. It says most livestock market weekly prices are published and easily attained and viewed by producers. There is not this level of transparency with the buying stations where cattle are marketed and broke down and repackaged and then sold for a profit. They may not show a commission, but they are not working for free. I think it's more of a comment than it is anything, but I just wanted to kind of, I don't know if you want to make any comments about maybe what constitutes a reportable sale that a livestock market, or that KDA would come and report the sale, because I know they can't report those sales at a buying station.
Maggie, would that be transparency?
I mean,
yes.
I think so.
Oh, you come to the market, open, competitive, honest auction. There's no more transparency than that. Those markets are reported, and if they're not reported, they historically do it themselves right off of the invoice.
Okay. So that's all the questions we have for this evening. I really appreciate all of our attendees. In closing, Jim and Dave, do you have any closing comments you want to make to the group?
I just want to thank this guy for coming up. If nothing else, I've had a good time this afternoon catching up and talking to him. And thank you so much for driving up and being with us.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for all you do. Our efforts, especially at the state level, would not be possible without our networks.
Yep.
And
Yes.
the Kentucky Cattlemen's, the Kentucky Beef Network, I truly could not do what we
Yeah.
do as far as issue management without you guys.
Yep.
And I think all 9 of these field guys would say the same thing. We don't have time to do what you do
Yep.
out there running that hall and keeping us informed with some of the issues.
Yep.
And then we're going to the table and we're going to deal with them. And I thank you for that.
Yep.
So with that, I appreciate your all's partnership on these webinars through the Kentucky Livestock Marketing Association. I also want to put a plug in for the Kentucky Beef Council and the Kentucky Livestock Marketing Association have come together and sponsored BQA enrollments in Kentucky for 2021. So that's a wonderful opportunity that if you have not gotten your BQA number or you need to recertify it, this year is a nice time to do it because we have the wonderful sponsorship from the Beef Council and KLMA. So tonight was night 1. We have 2 more sessions that will be coming up next Thursday and the following Thursday. Next Thursday's session is questions to the sale block. We have 5 livestock market managers that will be with us on Zoom, taking your questions from just free form. So if you have a question, we will be pushing out a survey later or next week, or you can come and bring your question that evening and we'll work through them with our managers and dig into some of the technical aspects of running a sale. Then the following week, we will also be digging into the value-added marketing opportunities that livestock markets in Kentucky offer to Kentucky cattlemen. So there's a lot of opportunity out there and we'll get into those specifics at that time. But once again, I really appreciate you all joining us this evening and tuning in with the great questions, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.